This is the M1005 Stresemann Special Edition pen by Pelikan. I've shown it in a previous video before, but I haven't done a video on this specific pen yet. Just for size comparisons, I will put an image with the size of the pen uncapped with other popular pens, but I just wanted to show you what it looked like against probably the pen that it will be compared against most, which is the M800. I'm going to uncap both pens to kind of give you a better look. So these are the two pens side by side, and you probably have an impression that the M1000 or the M1005 pens by Pelikan that they were huge pens. And looking at this, you can clearly see that it's not the case. There's not very much in it in terms of dimensions between the M1000/1005 and the M800. Just reading out the dimensions a little bit, it's about 13.5 centimeters uncapped, and with a 12 millimeter diameter section. Compare this with the M800, which is just slightly shorter. It's about 12.75 centimeters uncapped with slightly over 11 millimeter section. So in terms of size, not much in it, right? And when you hold the M1000 series of pens in your hand, the thing that we would probably feel the most is actually that large piece of metal at the back, which forms the piston mechanism. It's way larger than the one here. Even though this is big, the one on the M1000 is much bigger, and when you hold the M1000/1005, you will feel that weight at the back. That's the first impression. Second impression probably is the size of the nib, and as you can tell, it is bigger. I'm not sure what to call the size of the nib. Normally in the Yowo series of nib sizes, this would probably be very close to the number 8 or the number 9, and this is number 6 if you compare that with Yowo number 6 nibs. So I'll put the M800 or M805 down, and I'll just talk about the M1000/1005. I think I'll just call it 1000 just for the sake of me repeating both of the designations. So size-wise, it would be what I classify as the upper end of whatever I feel most people would feel to be comfortable. I do have larger pens, but those pens typically feel very unwieldy in the hand, and those pens kind of give me a feeling that like a marker pen, like a whiteboard marker pen. This one is still slim enough, at least in the section, to feel like a fountain pen, and it's very easy to control it when writing. Just some comparisons between, let's say, the most popular pens, which and again talking about size, compared to the Montblanc 149. That pen has probably a similar size nib in terms of length, but it's way shorter. It's a little bit shorter, and that's the same case for the Sailor King of Pen as well. Probably might do a comparison in a subsequent video with the 3 pens, but that would be too long of a video today if I did that. So proportion wise, this pen, and another thing about those other 2 pens is that those 2 pens have a very thick section, right? It's a way more than this 12 millimeter section. Those come with a much bigger section, and to me, I think I prefer the slimmer section when writing, right? So that's one point. In terms of how well this pen is made, it is a very well made pen, And this being the Stresemann model, it has a translucent or area down here. You can't really make it out because the lighting, it's dark behind here. But if you put this body up against the light, you can actually see like an empty ink area down here, and you can actually see how much ink you have in the barrel, so you know when to refill. So, and it's very classy looking. It's very, some people have described it as very black tie, very office looking. I like it because generally all my pens are generally either black or some dark color, right? So to me, it's a very beautiful pen, very well made. 2 rings down here. Like I mentioned, this cellulose acetate body down here, very nice section. Looking at the cap, which I didn't really speak much of, it's fairly typical Pelikan here. Pelikan and the chick down here, Pelikan beak clip. Not much else to say, you know, down here. Probably, I'm not sure whether you'll be able to make it out. It just says Pelikan Souverän here. Nowhere does it actually say its designation, which is the M1005. Looking at the nib closely, you can actually see a couple of details. It's a lot more spaced out compared to the M800 series of nibs. So these both are, you know, single-toned silver-colored nibs, right? So you can actually see the difference between the two. I would say pretty similar decoration. This looks a lot more spaced out compared to this one. And you might be able to see better on camera rather than me peering through my lens. So it's a well-made pen in the kind of what I call the old school way, right? So unlike the, you know, like a very modern pen, I don't have that many pens on my table. This is a very, you know, industrial German design, the Lamy 2000. And you know, I'm sure all of you are familiar with what a pilot pen will look like. Very traditional, very fountain pen like. This one, the Pelikans, at least the Souverän series of pens, all have that very unique look, which I like. It's not like a typical fountain pen look, if you know what I mean, a typical resin type look. Let's do a little bit of writing, right? So I think I'm going to pull out this notebook. It's actually a Muji notebook today. It's a fairly large notebook. And I'll show you what the pen is like when it's writing. So print writing is fine because this nib is extremely soft. It does have that characteristic which I always talk about when I evaluate nibs, which is smooth enough with a tinge of feedback. But for some fountain pens, they're not ideal for print writing. But this one, it's fine. You could see a little bit of hard studding down here, but it's generally fine for print. This is a fine nib. Just trying to keep within this line width on this notebook. It's a fairly thin line. I think it's about 5 mm. And generally, this nib is the characteristic, and I'm not sure whether you'll be able to pick it up on paper. There's a kind of a rubbing or singing sound that's generated when I'm using the pen, probably because the tines are very, very tight, is my guess. It's a very soft nib, extremely soft. I don't tend to put a lot of pressure when I write with my fountain pens, right? But generally, I would say the feeling of this pen, I think that's probably the most important thing. Compared to the M800, this is a different ink. By the way, this is Diamine Safari that I was using. For this one, it's a lot harder, not way harder, but definitely you can feel the stiffness of this nib compared to the, and definitely it's not as wet as the M1000 series of pens, right? So nib wise, I would say the performance is very good, except for that slight singing or that scratching feeling between the tines, like I mentioned earlier on. Like I said earlier on, it is a pretty wet nib. The other consequence of having such a large nib is like what I described. You know, if you have, it depends what type of angle you like when you write between the nib. Let's assume this is the nib of the fountain pen versus the paper, right? So basically, if this angle for you, if you hold the pen extremely vertical versus holding it very low to the paper, it would all depend whether or not you are comfortable with writing with a slightly shallower angle, which is probably what would happen if you get a pen like this. I hope you know what I mean by that description. So, closing thoughts about the Pelikan M1000. I'm just going to stop saying M1005. And before I go into closing thoughts, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, the price. So this pen I got used, right? I typically get pens used nowadays rather than buying them new and doing unboxings for you guys. Like for example, this Lamy was used. This other pen was used as well. So I bought it used, and I thought I paid a fairly good price for it. If you were to get this pen brand new, it would cost you, at least here in Singapore, by the way, this exact pen probably can't be obtained anymore that easily. This pen came out in the 2019, if I'm not wrong. But if you would get the green version or the black version, these are the two most common colors right now, you will be paying, at least here in Singapore, about 1,000 Singapore dollars. I've seen it in the US for about 800 US dollars. So that's the retail price. You might be able to get a better price, but to be honest, at that full retail price, it's pretty expensive. Just to give you a comparison of this pen's price when way back in 2006, I believe you could get this for about 300 US dollars. Right, so the price of the pen has actually gone up by quite a lot. So should you get the M1000, right? I guess just take note of what I mentioned about that nib, that very soft nib. There are pros and cons to having a very soft nib. You know, make sure you know how to use soft nibs, or whether or not you like soft nibs before you get this, because this is a very, very soft nib. I didn't show you the line variation just now, but it can produce line variation, but the characteristic of this nib is a very wet, very soft nib. And as you saw just now, this being a fine and this being a fine as well, the line width that you would get with the larger pen is probably the same as that of the smaller pen, which is the M800. So why do I talk about the M800 in comparison with this pen is I am perfectly happy with the M800 as maybe if I only had one pen to live with for the rest of my life, right? So it's a very good pen. It's a very well weighted pen. It's a very well built pen. The nib is, you know, I have no complaints at all about the nib, right? Unless you have a very compelling reason to not like the M800, maybe it's too small for you, I would say for the majority of people, just stick with whatever you have, right? Assuming you already have an M800. This pen is for the big nib aficionados, those people who love pens with a big nib. If you get one at a good price, good enough price, definitely go for it, especially if you like soft feeling nibs. So I'm not sure whether or not that conclusion helped. As usual, you know, this was a very quick look at this pen. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll be back soon. Leave your comments below if you have any further questions. Again, take care and bye-bye.